Gotharman's Little Deformer 2. It is a sampler, it is a sequencer, it's an effects processor, it's a distortion device. It's very close to just a digital modular interface. So, to start, we got 8 edit knobs, we got our volume knob, a basic sound there, that is your default sound. You got 8 tracks that can be sequenced independently. You got 9 through 16 tracks, 17 through 24, 25 through 32 with this button here. Select a sample. The default is the synth engine, which again, sounds like that. Let's start with the synth engine. Starts off with the pulse width turned all the way up. That's just the way it is. But you've got a nice sine wave there. And it's continuously variable from sine to triangle to saw to pulse to noise. And all of that has pulse width modulation. So the sine wave, for example. Each has its own filter, multiple filter modes with some really odd ones. You've got your low pass, your band pass, high pass, and then you get some weird ones that I'm not sure what exactly they do, but they sound great. Special filter mode. Let's go back to sine wave. It's called shape mode, where instead of adjusting a cutoff, you go to this next page, and you've got these filter adjust parameters. I mean, there are lots of ways you can just sculpt the sound in here and create your own samples, which is something I've done. So I'm just going to reload this and just load samples and get sequencing. How I have my samples organized is in kits instead of like single samples. So like 606, for example, if I just play it, it just plays all the sounds. For every sample, you can create chops within the sample, which are basically just starting points. So right now the chops are off, but select chop 1, 2. We'll have our kick there. We'll load another 606, and I want a hat. And then I want to sequence this. So I select track 1, I'll have a 16-step sequence, and just go like 128. We'll just get a basic ass pattern going. I'm scrolling through the steps with this button here. 1 through 8, 9 through 16, 17 through 24. Pretty boring, but it works. But here's where shit gets weird. One thing I like to do is go to the LFO page here, and here's how it's set up. You've got 2 LFOs that can only modulate global parameters like the filter, the distortion, or the effects. And then you have 3, 6, 7, 8 more LFOs that can be sent literally anywhere else. I'm going to program an LFO, have it triggered by our kick drum. So I want a saw wave, which is just a decaying envelope, and I want to engage my distortion here. Right now it's set to bit manipulation, which is just like a, sample rate reduction, bit crush effect. The distortion I really love is sine. So you see as I like turn this up, it kind of loses a bit of its low end, whereas down here, it retains it. So I'm gonna tune it up to like 67 or whatever. Go to the modulation page. Forgot to set something up. I set up the rate and I set up the wave, but there's also this page where you can set trig LFO1 with sample 1, and I don't want it to loop. Anyway, back to the modulation page. So I want LFO1, go to distortion. I want it to adjust the drive parameter. That was the parameter I was adjusting earlier. And listen as I turn it up. It's kind of subtle. Let's get a more boomy kick drum to really accentuate it. There we go. So we got our basic pattern there. Let's do a basic run through of the effects section. We've got 4 audio buses. Right now everything is on bus 1, so this is the only parameter I'm going to be messing with. We've got ourselves a delay, a dual delay, 2 flavors of reverb, pitch shaper, which is based on another Gotharman module, glitch shifter, sample pitch, double granulator, variator, time stretch, pitch shaper 2, obstructo, and anagran and chorus. Really, the only effects that I really use are delay, reverb, sometimes variator, and the chorus. I haven't really explored much of the other ones. A good place to start is delay. So I'm going to play around with this for a bit. So you have your basic, time. It's like coarse tuning and fine tuning. You have this group parameter, which is like, it's like an even coarser adjustment of time. So you have like coarsest, coarse, fine tuning. You have your feedback. You have size, which sort of cuts up each delay tap. I'll just show how that sounds. You have a crossfade, so the amount of crossfade between each tap. You sometimes get these weird harmonics, like at tighter delay times, like these weird higher harmonics that appear when you turn the crossfade all the way up, which I kind of like. have this second page of parameters here called beam and deep. Deep, it brings in like more lower harmonics. I mean, deep, that makes sense, right? Beam, it's kind of a similar effect to size, except, I don't know. Show, don't tell. How about that? So I'm going to go into the filter now. Right now it's off, connection off. You can turn it on, so it's like a global filter. It's pre the effects channel, so we're still going to get those like higher harmonics from the delay, which is pretty nice. So that's just on. We could have it affect only the delay. We can even filter the delay feedback, which gets, I mean, you can kind of hear it already, just how crazy it gets. One cool thing about the filters is that they all have this filter adjust, even when you're not using the shape mode, which I can't quite explain it, other than these outer two seem to mess with the low and mid frequency ranges, and this appears to like mess with the filter Q a bit. So let's see how that sounds. Turn this feedback back up. I like the way the delay sounds, but I don't want it to just be on all the time. And that's where this LFO that I have modulating the distortion comes in. I can also have it duck out the effects channel. So pretty much do the same thing. I'm doing a negative modulation. So LFO1 is gonna go to time, mix 1. And here's something that you got to keep in mind when you use this thing. All modulation is bipolar, so I'm going to set it to 128. This isn't a negative envelope that subtracts 128 from the value. It is a bipolar thing, so since it's a saw, it's going to decrease minus 64 and then slowly rise back up and then to positive 64 to make our value of 128. And that sounds like this. Have it set to 64, so it's going down to 0. I'm going to take this same LFO, that same sawtooth, and I'm going to mess with the filter that is in our effects feedback, our delay feedback path. I'm just going to have it mess with the cutoff. This is what I was wanting to get to, is this freeze button. At all times, there's an audio buffer in the effects that you can freeze and just lock in place. So when I hit this freeze button, the delay track is just gonna like stutter. So let's hear what that sounds like. So cool performative capability. Right now the delay is really tight. If I set this delay, let's experiment. Turn this delay all the way up, and then and while this is frozen, like I just showed you with this time control, you can still edit the delay parameters. Feedback's not going to do anything. Delay can be a looper, can just be like an audio scrubber. It's a really versatile machine. I'm not really doing it justice on explaining everything it can do. My goal is to really just show what I do. It's got like great performative capabilities. It has a song mode. I don't use the song mode. Usually I just have a track playing like this. Usually just play with mutes. We're just working with like just the raw samples right now. We haven't really done any editing on the samples other than adding distortion, delay, and then filtering that delay feedback. So now we can go in and just like mess with the samples and see where we can go from there. Lower pitch snare now. You have these phase parameters here that are really cool, I think. Maybe I'll bring this to a lower pitch. And then I'm just going to mess around with the phase on the snare here and see how that sounds. It may be more pronounced on the bass drum, actually. Let's try it. See, I really liked the way that sounded, and I don't want to have to dive into this menu to access those controls. So here's something I can do. I want to be able to get the full sweep of these parameters on the two edit knobs on the, I'll just call it the front page or the preset page. So I'm just going to set these to 128, because that's the middle point between 256 and 0. I'm going to go to the modulation page, knob 1, to adjust sample 1 phase, do the full range, knob 2, sample 1, phase level. So now, on this home page here, I have access to those two parameters with these two knobs. I really just like that gnarly part when the phase is all the way up. So I'm just going to rework this. I'm just going to default this phase level to be max instead of knob 1 controlling the phase. I'm just going to control the phase level. Knob 2, we don't want knob 2. Zero that out. So pretty cool. I kind of want this delay line to move around more. Here's something cool about the sequencer, is you've got these controller tracks. You've got 4 of them. These are step-by-step programmable values. I don't like to think about stuff too much, so I go in this menu here on the sequencer page and just hit random control a few times. So now, on track 1, we got a whole bunch of random values put in there. So I only want it to do 8 steps on that controller track. Default is 32. So I'm bringing it down to 8 at 1/16. And I want that controller track to sequence ever so slightly delay time. Time. Maybe I'll go by like 10. So let's see what that sounds like. I'm gonna just adjust the step rate. Mess with the samples some more. I like that. So it kind of does that around like 43, that like really hissy thing where it just like cuts out all the other frequencies. I'm gonna bring that out to the front panel controls. Let's go knob 2, and that was sample 3, cut off. Let's go by like, let's go 10 again. Won't take much. here's something I haven't even mentioned. So as you can see, this isn't a default starting preset. I created a starting point for myself to include, here's the big reveal. You ready for this? To include the Alesis Nanoverb. I have a aux send coming from my mixer into this cable here, and this is being fed back into the Deformer's inputs. So I've got a multi-effect unit patched in a feedback loop with this workstation here, and its level is controlled by this knob. I'm going to let this play, and I'm just going to turn up this knob and see what kind of weird shit happens. So here's something that I also like to do. Go back to that LFO page. We're going to set up LFO3 to be a similar, just another decaying envelope triggered by our kick. So I'm going to have LFO3 duck out that feedback loop. We'll go to common, which is like a global thing. Input 1. I'm going to have it go up by 128. Do the same thing for input 2. But before I press play, this is the thing that doesn't have a shortcut, this common page. Just so I don't overload the inputs, I'm going to tune these to -64. That kick is going to duck out that feedback loop, and here's what that sounds like. I don't want that delay, that grindy sound to be active all the time. Going back in the modulation menu, I'm going to make knob 7, this knob here, turn down that delay. So now, knob 7 turned down. That works. Not quite what I wanted, but it's interesting. So you can do a lot with just 3 samples, 2 LFOs, and just some creative modulation routing. I mean, it's not really too creative because all I'm doing is having these 2 LFOs duck out in time with the kick, all the effects channels, and then all the internal processing and like all of its quirks and how things react and mingle in there really do the rest of the work. Maybe I'll perform this out a little bit and then start with something fresh just to go over like its sampling capabilities. How about that? That's a track. Let's make our own sample with the synth engine. Something pretty easy to do. Channel 1, we've got a sine wave. Tune it down. We have this decay. It's connected to the amplitude. So let's turn this up some. It's connected to the amplitude, so as I adjust this, it'll produce predictable results. There's also a pitch envelope parameter that's connected to that amplitude decay. I don't want that. Maybe for like Mega Man flavors. Not what I'm going for. Consulting the LFOs again. I'm going to get a really fast, we'll go 251. We will get a sawtooth. We will have that triggered by that sample and not have it loop. Modulation page. We're going to have that LFO modulate the pitch or tune of that sample. So now we have separate audio and pitch envelopes. So let me get a sequence going so I don't have to keep manually triggering that. So this is our starting point. I can mess with the rate of this LFO. I can also have LFOs modulate each other. So let's try it. LFO 4 modulates LFO 3 rate. I'm gonna have it go 10. Let's play around with this some more. We'll get something a little more unique. So I like the way that sounds. So I'm gonna tune this to 60, sure, 63. Why not? Go to the modulation page. Let's have LFO 5 triggered by the kick, not looping. We'll have it slower than the other two. Let's go 200. Another saw. We'll have it like swell in, that like pulse width modulation sound. Just adds a bit more character, a bit more movement. There's also a pre-filter level control. I'll have it hit this envelope some. So I like this sound. That's our kick. I'm gonna resample it. Go back to the sample page, sample record, push edit. The source is our output, so I'm gonna hit this, waiting for trigger. Boom. There we go. We got a sample. We saved it, we got it. So I'm gonna reload this, shortcut reload to just restore the preset to its original saved state. And now I'm gonna scroll all the way through my samples and find that kick at the very end. There's our kick. So this opens up a whole bunch more editing possibilities, all right? Go back to the sample page. Now we can adjust the overall pitch of that sample. We could even, so now we have this decay parameter, right? In the synth engine, there's no way to detach that parameter from the amplitude, but with a sample loaded in, you have this envelope on-off option. So this is it off, this is it on with a really short decay. That pitch envelope parameter that I brought up earlier is still attached to that envelope rate, but we just have another envelope that we can use to modulate the pitch. So I don't know, let's see what it sounds like. I could even program a sequence for it to jump from octave to octave by tuning it down to 24. Going to the sequencer page, let's go 8 steps, eighth notes. When it's at 0, it'll be at the first octave. When it's at 255, it'll be at the next. Sequence track, modulate sample 1's tune by 48 or a full octave. Let's program a sequence in here. 16 steps, here we go. And we made this kick ourselves. We can bring in that feedback too to even widen it up even more. Yeah, let's make more sounds. Easy snare drum. Let's go noise, tune it all the way up, get a short decay. This is more like a hat than it is a snare. So I want something to like add some punch in there. Really cool thing that I love messing around with on here is the sample trigger function. You could have one sample trigger another sample. This is sample 2, and this is sample 3. So we got these two isolated elements. I'm going to have sample 2 trigger sample 3. So now it's a little punchier. And I can even go like a little further and have bandpass filter, kind of tune it a little under the top, and have a negative filter envelope. Sure. This is just 2 samples that we made ourselves. Let's get a little ticky hat in there. High pass filter. There you go. We'll just have it hit every 16th note. I want to be able to control the decay of this hi-hat. Knob 1, sample 4, envelope decay. Now we've got control over that decay. Cool way to have like dynamic control over your patch. Maybe I'll play around with the effects section a bit, since that's like weird and chaotic and probably a nice place to end on. Start more in the comfort zone with the pitch shaper. We have a song forming, folks. I don't know what this is doing, but I kind of like it. remember, this is all coming from this. Which I guess is still pretty cool by itself. Maybe I want to fade between the two. Oh! Thanks for joining.